President Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin will be meeting via video call in just a few hours from now. Tensions are higher between the two countries as Russia is stationing tens of thousands of troops at the Ukrainian border. The U.S. has been coordinating with NATO allies in case of a possible invasion. Now, Ed O'Keefe is at the White House with the very latest on this. So, Ed, we just got, a lot of background information about the tensions that are building at the Ukrainian border. What can we expect from President Biden and Putin's call later on this morning? What are the main topics that the two will be discussing? It won't just be Ukraine. There are other issues as well.
That's right. I mean, this is obviously the most immediate and concerning to American officials, given that the military buildup along the Russia-Ukraine border is bigger than it was last spring, even bigger than back in 2014 when they invaded Crimea. But among other issues, they're also going to discuss the ongoing nagging concern of cybersecurity and how the two countries are targeting each other with cyber attacks. Plus, there's the ongoing concern in Europe and here in the U.S. about construction of what's called Nord Stream 2, or this gas pipeline that's running from Russia into Europe. And there are those here in the United States who believe there should be sanctions put on the country for building it. It's a long and complicated story, but it's among the subjects that will come up. Calls expected to begin around 10 a.m. Eastern time. We're not sure how long it will go, but the fact that it's been on the books for a few days is a sign that both of these countries are preparing. The Russian spokesman describing U.S.-Russia relations ahead of the call said they are, quote, in a quite dire situation. So that should give you a sense of how high stakes this could be.
Yeah, and when we spoke yesterday, I had said that, putting pressure on Russia is not sort of something that the U.S. can do on its own. And President Biden, we know now, spoke with leaders from France, Germany, Italy, and the U.K. last night. What came out of that discussion? Well,
and this was designed, as it was before he met with Putin in July in Geneva, to make sure everybody's on the same page and to prepare for the possibility that he comes out of this call with further diplomatic or other actions that have to be taken by the countries together. So he had this call with the heads of UK, France, Germany, to sort of compare notes. They say they're all essentially on the same page. We are expecting that the president will have a conversation with the Ukrainian leader in the aftermath of this call as well, to give him a sense of what's going on. Remember, Ukraine has been angling to become a member of NATO now for several years. The alliance hasn't made much movement on that front. Today, the Russian president expected to push President Biden to ensure that Ukraine doesn't become a member of NATO. Senior administration officials said, look, this president believes that every country should be able to make its own security decisions. But the other thing that Putin's likely to bring up is the idea that NATO shouldn't expand any further east into former Soviet territory. So that'll be a sticking point potentially as well. But it's part of the reason why this president, at least, is eager to coordinate with key European allies ahead of a high-stakes call like this one.
Before I go on to some other news, the country is marking the 80th year since the attack on Pearl Harbor. I'm wondering what the president and the first lady have been doing this morning.
Just a little while ago, they left the White House to stop by the National World War II Memorial there on the National Mall. They laid a wreath, as you see there, and stopped by the column for the state of New Jersey. Remember that this memorial, beautiful spot in the shadows of the Washington Monument, and between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial, includes a pillar for each of the states and territories from which men and women served and gave it all for the land of the free. The two of them here making this early morning, otherwise unannounced stop, probably before D.C. traffic and the tourists start showing up on a cold morning here in Washington. But as you said, 80 years since the attack on Pearl Harbor, and one for which I know our John Dickerson, who's there, has said will probably be the last that most of those that served in World War II will be alive to mark, at least one of the major anniversaries. So quick stop there for the president. Also notable because, of course, his good friend, the late Senator Bob Dole, was a key supporter and official in helping get this memorial built, and who still made pilgrimages on a fairly regular basis to say hello to World War II veterans who were making those honor flights here to Washington to visit the memorial. So also kind of a personal stop for him to pay tribute to his friend who worked so hard to get that memorial built.
Right. So I want to bring up something that we talked about yesterday. Actually, we've been talking about for a while, the diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. Yeah. Yesterday, we got the official announcement from the administration. I'm wondering if there was any response from China.
Well, they have said all along that these kinds of steps aren't necessary, shouldn't be taken, and are sort of an affront to them. There had also been some suggestion that China may not really be allowing in many other VIPs anyway, although, again, Russian President Putin has announced he plans to be there. And U.S. officials stress this is a boycott, and this is a step taken to, among other things, mark the fact that China continues to violate human rights, especially in the case of Uyghurs in Western China. But they stress that the athletes, of course, can still compete. And that is, of course, a big difference from 1980, when the U.S. issued an outright boycott completely of the Olympics that were being held in the Soviet Union. In this case, they say, look, we want U.S. athletes to compete. We support them. We're going to root them on. But we don't want to acknowledge these games with an official government delegation because of the steps that have been taken by the Chinese authorities over the years. The other thing to point out, the nuance in this, is that while there will be no senior U.S. diplomatic presence there, no president, first lady, vice president attending the opening or closing ceremonies, U.S. athletes, when they are traveling for the Olympics, are always escorted by U.S. diplomatic security, or the security branch of the State Department, because it's such a large and high-profile contingency of Americans. That's standard. Other countries do this as well for the Olympics. That will continue, so they will have that standard, sense of protection that they've had at other games before.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much.
Take care.